Hello and welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/ drive-in double feature podcast. There's some fun collectibles over there. You can collect all the episodes. Once you collect them all, show them to your friends.
Mhm.
Compare which ones you collected. They'll show you which ones they collected, and then
Maybe you
maybe
could trade.
do some trades. Let them know, like, I'll trade you one flick chart fight for one Top Gun Maverick review, and you know what?
Oh,
That's a
that's a
fair trade.
classic. That's rare.
Yeah, that's a fair trade in my book. So
Well, soon we'll have a book out to go over the values of each one. So hopefully y'all can
yeah,
figure that out a little bit easier.
yeah, make sure you hold on to those because the value is just going to go up. But
Exactly.
you can hear all kinds of classic, high value episodes right over there on the Patreon. It's only $5 a month. Doesn't affect any regular content. But today we have 2000's Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and that is directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri. This one is the sequel to a movie that we had covered previously, the original Vampire Hunter D, which was 1985. So this is actually 15 years later at this point, and as you can imagine, the animation has changed very drastically in 15 years. So this
Yeah.
is, and this is a sequel, but I would say even if you didn't watch the first one, it's really not necessary to see this one because they're both standalone stories to where they're in a self-contained universe. It's kind of does his like little wanderer routine where he wanders into a town and gets a job, and that's pretty much the setup for both of the movies. So
And trust me, I was really happy because I started this and I was trying to like think back to the first movie, and I definitely had forgotten a lot about it. And I was like, oh no, okay, am I going to be lost? No, not even remotely lost. I was like, okay, I know who D is, and I think I'm good.
yeah, the only thing you need to know is he's a vampire hunter and he's a dampier. So
Yeah.
he's half vampire, half human. The the main plot of this story is that there's a girl named Charlotte, and she's been kidnapped by a vampire named Meyer Link, and uh, she's just been taken in the middle of the night, and her family is trying to get her to come back. And who do they hire? They bring in old D here, and they try to hire him on for the job.
Yeah,
Um,
but there's also a separate bounty hunter group that's also going after her. So there's more than just that conflict to go off of.
yeah, I mean they set it up pretty well. I think
Hmm.
they have a big standoff because they don't trust D at all, the family, and
Hmm.
the brother of the girl of Charlotte is pretty much just like you gotta bring her back, you gotta bring her back alive, and her father at this point is just like, I just want her either back here or if she does turn into a vampire, because D lets him know, it's like, well, what if she's a vampire already? Because that's a very real possibility.
Hmm.
And they're like, well, then you're going to have to kill her then, but I want you to bring her back regardless. So
Yeah.
that just shows how desperate they are. I mean, even the father, he's pretty much like, because even D's like, they're like, okay, we're going to pay you $10 million. He's like, make it 20. They're like, fine.
Yeah, what's the value of money in this universe, by the way? Because later on, we'll get in that scene later, but a horse costs 300,000, and I know it's because he's like a half vampire. They're boosting prices, but how much money is everyone throwing down in this world?
Yeah, it's very much set in like Transylvania esque type of times, but
Yeah.
with some mech elements to it. So there are some future elements, which
Mhm.
before this we recorded, I actually went back and rewatched the first movie just to see how different they were. And the other one, there is a lot of future stuff in there. It's like they
Okay.
have like that big techno lab, and it
Hmm.
looks like a freaking like Star Wars movie with like like whatever. If I imagine that's what a Star Wars movie would have, and I don't know if that's what it would have,
When you think of Star
but
Wars.
but yeah, it's very night and day difference because like
Hmm.
just the animation alone is like not even not even in the same class, like between
Yeah.
them. It's like this one is very fluid animation in this one. But getting back to my point, but I don't know like the actual value of the money. It's like
Yeah.
$20 million in 1800s maybe.
I don't
Uh,
know. It is what it is, it's kind of like, just like you said, it's in its own weirdo universe.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
very much just like because that's the thing. Like D is a very he's ageless. He's
Mhm.
immortal and he doesn't age ever. So there's a time skip in this movie, and D doesn't age, and even but none of the society has progressed in any sort of way. It's like everything still looks the same, despite
Mhm.
D being alive for like 20 something years or something. Like at this
Yeah.
point, or like really long time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Which we'll get into that, but I actually really thought that was a fun element of this movie. But this movie, it's very basic as far as like plot setup goes, because that setup's there. We need you to go get Charlotte, and it's a bounty hunter movie. I'm on the chase, and I'm going from basically it's a little episodic, not in a negative way, but going from monster to monster, because it's in a monster filled
Yeah,
universe, kill them, move on one step closer to Link and getting Charlotte.
yeah. It's like you said. There is the Marcus brothers, which is uh, four brothers and a sister.
Hmm.
That they're the other bounty group. So there is kind of like this fun dynamic where they're kind of fighting for who's going to get the kill over Meyer Link and to bring the girl back, because they very much want the money, and D, he's trying to get the job done, but he doesn't. He's he doesn't let it bother him. Like he's just like, I got to go do this job, and I don't care who gets in my way, type of thing. And
Hmm.
but I do like it because in the beginning of the movie, like when he does first encounter the Marcus brothers, they kind of are planning like, okay, well, why don't we just let D like go out and we'll let him do all the hard work, and then
Hmm.
we'll just come in from behind. And because there's this whole like fable that they use, like like the
Hmm.
metaphor, which so I watched the English and the Japanese dub.
Okay.
Um, and in the Japanese one, it's talking about like a squirrel and a snake.
Okay.
And then in the English one, it's talking about an owl and a squirrel.
Okay. Interesting. I wonder why they changed that.
I don't know, but it was just kind of funny. Like they were just like, oh yeah, this is like the squirrel would like hide them, and the snake would eat the food and then eat the squirrel,
Hmm.
and then the other one's like, oh, but then an owl would snatch him up, and so
Yeah.
it,
Well,
it just little differences like that. Did you watch the Japanese dub? Correct.
no, I actually watched the English dub. Yeah, yeah,
Ugh,
I know.
gross.
But that's what I was gonna ask you. How did you feel about them? Where was the English dub good, or was the Japanese dub just all around best?
I thought it was a pretty decent dub.
Hmm.
You know,
Okay.
uh, so like I said, like if you notice, if you go back and rewatch, I watched Vampire Hunter D, like I said before we recorded, and I watched the English dub of that one just because I wanted to be able to do other things while I could hear
Uh-huh.
it. But anyway, there's a lot like in that movie, the original one. There's a lot of like Southern characters that they have like in the English dub.
Hmm.
It's like,
Because
oh, tarnation, like
yeah,
that type
because
of
John
thing. And
DiMaggio shows up as a sheriff, and he's got a Southern accent, which I thought was really funny.
he does a couple of characters in this
Yes, he
movie.
does. Yeah, which is I guess that shows his range. I mean, he does so much work. You're bound to find him in anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess at this point he'd been on Futurama, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so there is like this Western element to both of these movies, because even like the Marcus brothers, like the oldest brother, he's kind of got like a little Southern twang to him,
Hmm.
and it's they have this little. It's a very anachronistic movie where you're just like, I don't know where they are, I don't know what time this is,
Hmm.
but I'm here for it, and
Yeah. Um. No, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I'm here for it. Once again, kind of like Metropolis, but not in the same way. The visuals are really nice to look at. Like you said, the look of this one very fluid, and like a lot of designs are really nice. The character designs are really good. So I do think once again we have another really great looking movie.
Yeah, top tier animation. I mean, I'm just gonna say this right now, just from watching both of the movies of the original one and going back, it's like almost every aspect of the original one they improved upon it with this
Mm,
movie. I mean, because the other one, I went back and looked. We both gave the original 3 stars.
okay, that sounds about
So
right.
um, I went back and I was like, I think I like this a little more than I did. So I bumped it
Mhm.
up to 3.5. Excuse me, sorry.
Wow. Okay, that just ruins everything.
Yeah. So but still though, like I was pretty I get it now, like why a lot of those people put this movie on that list of like, oh, this is an amazing movie, because I can see why this
Mhm.
would be like somebody's like favorite movie. Because I
Mhm.
remember this is a personal deal of mine. My brother actually had this movie on DVD,
Oh wow.
and so I know he watched it before. So and this is, like I said, this is like the very early days of anime becoming more mainstream, like before it
Mhm.
became like all over the place. So it was kind of like back in the 90s where it's like, oh, you can watch Dragon Ball Z, and now you got to like find like as much anime as you can consume. And this is one of the
Yeah.
titles that would probably be on the shelf of like an FYE or something.
Yeah, yeah, because this is definitely one of the more popular ones. Like I've or at least I've known about it. I could do a little more research, and I probably should. Um, but according to Wikipedia, this movie was made more for an American audience to get an American release.
So on my DVD copy, which I have, which I
Hmm.
really don't, but it was in that file.
I got you.
But in that DVD, there actually was a behind the scenes of
Mhm.
this movie, and it was about like a little 20-minute thing about it. Nothing special about it, because it was very it was a real kind of like a big fluff piece, to be honest with
I
you.
hate that.
And so it was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is a great story, great characters, and they would have like scenes where they would show them in the recording booths, but they don't like ever explain. Like it would just like be like these kind of like fly on the wall type of things that you would
Hmm.
see like of them doing. Because like in the very beginning of the movie, the Marcus brothers kind of go out and kill all these like vampire zombies, like servants of like the vampires that were trying to protect them.
Hmm.
And there's like one of them says like, hey, it's zombie time or whatever on the English one. And they're having like this discussion about, it's like, I don't know if we want to go with the line, it's zombie time. Like maybe if we'll do something like, it's time for action, or like it's time to kill these zombies or something. And then they're like, huh, yeah, maybe we could do that. And it's just like stuff like,
That's
it's like
so weird.
weird. But they do explain, like there's some that they do mention, like the score of this movie, like you said, like how it was done for like an American audience, like, and it was an American composer, and like the original, like the
Mm,
director would actually, he's like, oh yeah, I played him the music, and he's like, that's it, that's Vampire Hunter D right there.
that's really
and
cool.
and then the other aspect was some of the actual original Japanese creators, like the people that worked on the movie. It was kind of like a more so like those were kind of like the fluffier bits, but there was one like that actually did explain like some of the scenes where, like you said, like there's one scene where, well, before that, like his horse like falls off of a cliff and
Mhm.
explodes. It's like a very
Yeah.
gruesome scene. And but he has to go get a new horse, and like you said, he kind of rolls into town, and then the sheriff is kind of shows up and like, hey, like you need to get out of here right now, we don't want your types around here type of thing.
Mhm.
And the guy was saying, because they didn't, I don't think they put the person's name, or I can't remember if they did or not, but they probably did. But anyway, they were like, that was basically an homage to a lot of early Western movies, because
Oh,
and you
cool.
could you can kind of get that feeling where it's like the lone stranger walks into town, and he's
Mhm.
already been given a hard time just by his mere presence alone.
Yeah, I really like that scene too. Kind of, I
That's
thought,
probably my favorite scene in the movie, honestly.
yeah, I agree because it's probably the most memorable because they're standing there and the guy who sold the horse is like, "Hey, I sold the horse. It's my money," and and he's like, "Okay, let me teach you a lesson about these half vampires." You remember back in the day that they came in, killed some vampires, and saved a bunch of children. This man did it, and I was one of those kids. And you're not expecting that reveal that, oh, I was a
No.
kid, because you didn't realize that much. At least when he was telling the story, it was like, oh, okay, not that much time has passed, but a lot of time had passed. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really interesting reveal. I like that.
Yeah, I like how they do that moment, and they
Mhm.
because you don't realize how ageless this how
Yes.
D is, and that kind of gives you because this is an old man that's saying this, so
hmm
it's very clear. It's like, okay, he's been alive for a very long time.
hmm Yeah. And well, we got to get into one of the characters because the one sister of the brothers gang, Layla, is like one of the is probably the other main character of this movie. She's the other
Yeah,
lead,
but,
Bobby Hill.
yeah, I was gonna say that voiced by Bobby Hill. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and she it's Pamela Segal,
Unle-
right?
yeah.
Yeah, she's just I heard her voice, and once again I was like, oh yeah, I know who that
I
is.
I've heard her voice, and I can't tell you how many things because she's
Yes,
like at one point I think she was like in every single animated show you could probably have at one point, but
yeah.
she has a very memorable voice, and I think she does a really good job in this one. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I thought that character was actually really well done.
yeah, this what I like about her is that, so like I said, like when the Marcus brothers kind of go out and they try to go and do their own thing, they kind of get overwhelmed, and she's kind of left for dead at a certain point,
hmm
and she starts dying, and Dee comes over and saves her. And she's really mad about it because she kind of has a vendetta against vampires, because as we reveal later in the movie that her
hmm
entire family was basically killed by vampires. So
Yeah.
it's a real tragic story, like, and it does show like her more warming up to Dee, not in a romantic way or anything like that, just more of like accepting him as a human.
Yeah, just honestly, just kind of becoming friends. But they're still bounty hunters fighting over each other because they actually almost get Charlotte multiple times in this movie. And what causes a wedge here, it's not as easy because she actually loves Link, and not like a vampire kidnap, a Stockholm syndrome thing. She's actually in love with him, and they're
Yeah.
left to get married. And now it's almost like Dee is going to kidnap her to bring her back.
Yeah, and I was thrown off by that in a good way,
Yeah,
where
same.
I was like, I was, kind of, I was thinking it was going to be something like, oh, she's been hypnotized or
hmm
something like that, to where she wasn't under her own, in the right frame of mind. But no, she actually was in love with the vampire, and they're pretty much, their goal is like, we want to be together forever, and we're not going to let anyone stop us, type of thing.
hmm
And so it does add a level of sympathy to this one, and a little bit of a moral dilemma. And one thing I do like that they add in this movie is that D has been kind of, he's really, I guess there's a level of self hatred to himself, because he is half vampire, and he really hates that that he does have vampire like urges, and he is affected by the sun just like vampires. So, which we didn't mention, but he does have like his left hand can talk and
Yes,
has a
yeah,
face and a mouth, and that's kind of like his little sidekick. And the
yeah.
other difference is, like, in the English one, the hand talks a lot more in that one, because you
Really?
don't you don't
Because you
see
don't
the
see
hand
it.
that much. Yeah, correct.
hmm
So, but anyway, the hand's kind of like egging him on. It's like, oh, I know why you're making this whole thing personal. It's because if those two get together, they're going to make another creature just like you, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want a child like that in the world. So
hmm
it's there, so it does add a layer of like, this is not just a job to him. This is like on a personal level, where he's like, I
hmm
am morally obligated to make sure another
Yeah.
vampire doesn't become in this world again.
Yeah, because later on in the movie, he's pretty open, like, oh, I want you all extinct. Your time is going to come and we are going to all be dead. Um, yeah, which, I mean, I guess it's interesting. You know, it's kind of like Blade in a way. Um, except who's cooler?
Uh, D or Blade?
Yeah, D or Blade? Who you picking?
Well, Blade's got sunglasses, so him.
Yeah, I agree. Once D throws on some sunglasses, I think he'll become a whole lot
Who's
cooler.
cooler, Rock or Blade?
Oh, ooh, probably Blade. I would
Uh,
go for Blade.
I disagree.
The
Rock's the cooler
anime
one.
version of Blade, of course, which I can't believe actually happened. Uh,
Yeah, well, I need more Rock. We need a Rock standalone anime. But anyway,
yeah, Rock,
played by Rock.
Metropolis. Oh, there we go. Blade X Rock. I would
Yeah.
I would not pay money for that. Um,
But no, yeah, it's I like the aspect of the story because like you said, it does make it personal and it does have like emotional kind of connection to it to where it's like, okay, like I can understand why these characters are motivated by the way they are. There's
mhm,
not good motivations because this vampire still does kill people in
mhm.
order to get to this point, and the girl's kind of like, okay with this aspect that her potential lover is I just murdered like countless humans to get to this point. But they do have
Mhm.
a moment of self-reflection later in the movie. It's just like, oh, like we like so many people have died just for us to be together type of thing.
Mhm. No, yeah,
uh,
and I like that moment because because it works in hand with because he wants to turn her into a vampire, but is so apprehensive. Multiple times she's looks at her and is like, "Oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to turn her. I'm not going to take her blood." Which I think is really, I don't know, it makes you, like you said, sympathize with Link. Like in a movie like this, you expect the vampire to be just pure evil. Yeah, he's the bad guy, get him. But here it's like, oh, he actually has heart. He has like he's unwilling to change her. I thought that was a cool way to do the villain. Like you've been saying, a lot of moral dilemma, which I like.
yeah, so I mean, it's like you don't really know what the correct answer is about like which side should be the one to
Hmm.
achieve their goal. But what the movie does do, it does kind of reveal like the true villain of this movie because we're kind of led to believe that Meyer Link is the main bad guy of this movie, but the main bad villain in this one is actually a countess
Hmm.
named Countess Carmilla Elizabeth uh, Barthery, which is actually based off of a famous literary vampire character, a famous female vampire character, and that's kind of like what the whole thing is. That, and in the book too, it's like implied that she's a lesbian vampire.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting. They don't really go into this one, but she does take
They
blood-soaked baths.
they don't explain that, but it does kind of explain the motivations of this one because the whole point was, they're the two Meyer Link and Charlotte were coming to the castle to kind of seek
Mhm.
refuge and try to get to outer space where all the other vampire was. That's their main
Yes,
goal.
there is a rocket in this castle to go to space.
Yeah, so that she's kind of offering to help take them there, but really it was just a ploy to get them to the castle.
Mhm.
And the Countess actually ends up sucking the blood of Charlotte, and Charlotte ends
Mhm.
up dying from that. Uh,
Yes, yeah.
so that's what I was kind of like. It's like, so Charlotte, I mean, the Countess really wanted Charlotte for herself, so that's kind of what it going back to like
Lesbian.
she wanted to take the Charlotte for herself and not have Meyer take the chance for it. But we kind of converge to the point where they're all in the castle together and they all have like these horrific illusions that they're kind of
Yes.
shown, and there's some really good moments in there where like the like Meyer Link has his vision where Charlotte's being taken away by D, and Charlotte's kind of coldly like, I didn't ever want to be with you anyways, type of thing. And
Yeah.
and he gets sliced in half,
Yeah,
but
it's
he's
so
okay.
yeah, he's okay. He kind of like merges back together. But yeah, that scene of him getting sliced in half is good. If there's one thing this movie does really well, violence. Kind of, if I remember right, the other one also did violence extremely well. Like if I remember, I'm remembering one scene in particular that really like threw me off on how like gruesome it was. Not a moment like that in this one, but it's all done really well. So if you're into that kind of stuff, it's there.
Yeah, I would say the first one actually has a lot more violence compared to
Yeah,
this one, but the other one though, which this one doesn't have, thankfully, is a lot of the fan servicey moments. Like, like
I noticed that.
in the first one, the main girl Doris, she gets her top ripped off and her boob like it's exposed.
Hmm.
And this one, it's very there's very tasteful. It's not nudity or anything like that. It's just
Yeah, it's not like forced down. It's not like, oh, we had to throw this in here to keep everyone like happy. The vampire, the main vampire lady, she's just naked because she's in a bath of blood. Makes sense. I get it.
yeah, it's supposed to be more horrific than sexy. Like, ooh,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
um, so this movie, yeah, like I said, that's another aspect where it just improved. But they conquered their visions, and because like Dee's just totally unaffected. Like they showed Dee's like, oh, I'm so sorry for falling in love with your father, and like I should have never
Hmm.
done that. And he just kills like his imaginary mother, like you're like, I get out of here type of thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And but they eventually he's able to go out and kill the countess, and they do have a final encounter between Dee and Meyer,
Hmm.
and Dee clearly has the upper hand. He could easily kill Meyer, but like like I said, he kind of has that realization, like where he just sympathizes with him because the only thing he wanted was just to be with his lover Charlotte, and
Hmm.
so he just takes Charlotte's ring just to prove that she died, and it's like, okay, well, this is the proof I need to prove that
Yeah.
she's dead.
Yeah, I like that. She's like, well, she's dead, so I'm just gonna leave. Which I thought that was a good way to do it. And him and Layla go off, and then the rocket goes into space. So you think, oh, well, Link did exactly what he wanted to do.
Yeah, and
Well, partly.
yeah, there's there's a really poignant moment at the end where I really like that ending scene as well
Yeah.
because they kind of mentioned like they had the bonding moment earlier in the movie between Layla and Dee where they're both kind of like dead inside emotionally, and they're just like, we're never gonna, it's like, you and I are the same person, we're just gonna kind of end up alone,
Hmm.
and once we die nobody's gonna care type of thing. And they make a promise. It's like, okay, well, how about in 80 years, whoever's still alive has to go deliver flowers to that person's grave so that way I forgot. And they're like, okay. And then of course Layla dies because she's human. And
Hmm.
then Dee shows up to her funeral, uh, and she has a whole group of people there, you know,
Yep.
mourning her death. So it's like and Dee's kind of happy. He's like, okay, I guess I didn't need to show up after all.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I like that. It's because the little kid goes up to him, because you don't know quite what's going on, or at least I didn't, because I knew it was a funeral, but it's like, and then you realize, oh, it's been that long. That's right, he doesn't age. He looks exactly the same, so it kind of looks like the next scene over, and yeah, that much time has passed, and she was actually remembered. So good for her. And then Dee still looks like a loner.
yeah, so I mean, it's just kind of like it continues the series of like this wandering traveler just taking care of vampires because that threat's never going to go away.
Yeah. I do hope that Disney picks this up and maybe we get an in-between sequel about Layla and see what happened to her in between that time. Maybe some references and stuff. D shows up for a little bit. It'd be fun.
Yeah,
We can
get
only
a little
hope.
cameo, be a little fun nod.
Yeah.
Um, I Yeah, no, that'd be great. Who wouldn't love
I'm
that?
just kidding, but yes.
uh, One aspect though I wanted to go back to because I feel
Hmm.
like we kind of skimmed over it is the action bits of the movie. So this movie does have a lot of fighting in it,
Hmm.
particularly with the Marcus brothers, and there's like these really unique monsters that they end up fighting. The Barbosa, I think they're called,
Yes, yeah, that's right.
and Barbosa, I think, is what it is actually.
Something like that. Yeah, not Pirates
Eh,
of the Caribbean.
Yeah, Barbosa, I believe. But anyway, there's one that controls shadows, and one of the brothers gets killed because like the shadow monster stabs the brother's shadow and he dies from it.
Yeah, I like that a
And
lot.
and the guy just dies like standing, and then there's a woman that can turn into like a tree monster.
Yeah, it like
And
morphs into a tree and like picks up branches, people by branches. And I was really scared that this movie would go into a nasty area, but it doesn't. It's fine.
go goes the Evil Dead one
Yeah,
route.
exactly. I was like, oh no, but no, it's a pretty good action scene actually.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because she dies because she gets struck by lightning as a
I know it's
tree.
so random, right?
Yeah,
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 it was funny.
it was funny. And then there's a werewolf monster that has like a mouth first, or his stomach turns into a mouth, or yeah, his stomach turns into a mouth.
Yes, yeah.
And they all suffer horrific fates, and like the brothers end up dying. And but they really entertaining action moments, I thought. I mean, I was, like I said, the animation for like those fight scenes are incredibly impressive. Like, there would be like a scene where like somebody gets cut in half or whatever, or like they get just completely mauled to death. It's a completely gruesome moment, but I mean, it's the animation looks so good, or you're just like, that's nasty, but it looks really good though.
Yeah, wow, somebody drew that really well. No, I
Yeah.
I agree. I think overall it's just like a fun movie. It's a really good movie to look at. A really fun scenario. I like all the places it went to. He's a cool character, and yeah, I don't know. It's a good time. I understand why this one, because the original comes up in conversations, but I feel like a lot of people say the sequel is better, and I do agree. I do think it
I,
does top it.
it's 100% better. Like I said,
Yeah.
like almost every aspect of the original one is improved upon with this movie. It looks so much better. Just the characters, you have a little more, like the story alone, I thought had a better uh plot development to it. The villain in that one, it's a villain that you actually care about and makes you
Mhm.
want to, like, I'm not really sure, makes you debate on, like, should I root for these people? They're evil, but they
Mhm.
have good, but they're in love.
Yeah.
So um I just really great movie. I had a great time with this one. I can definitely see why people put this on the top of their anime film lists, and why this one has sort of stood the test of time 20 years later.
Yeah, this one enters in at 72 for me. 72. No, but
Oh,
I'm kidding. No, but no, it is a really solid, fun movie. I get the love for it. Totally agree.
definitely. But I think that's going to do it for Vampire Hunter D, and that's going to do it for anime week. But I think we're going to go back to another familiar theme, which will be what next week, Nathan?
Isn't that crazy? We're back at it again. It feels like we just talked about these. It always feels that way. But no, it's always fun to get back to this. It is Bonmura. And we on Tuesday, we are going to be back at it again with Bond with Die Another Day. But Ryan, what are we going to be talking about on Thursday?
Well, Nathan, we're going to go back to Gamera, and we're going to be talking about Gamera versus Giron. Well, Nathan, you can actually go watch Gamera versus Giron for free on Tubi right now.
Awesome. Perfect.
And or you can go watch the Mystery Science Theater episode 2. That's also on YouTube if you really want to watch that too. So
If you don't want to laugh for
yeah, I appreciate fine cinema without the comedy parody track. Thank you very much.
yeah,
So
I'll do that myself, okay?
I'm funnier than these people.
That's
And
but yeah, we've talked about that one before. Like I'm funnier than these guys.
yeah. I'll handle it. Let the professional handle it. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us for this week. If you have any thoughts and opinions, please email us over at driveanddoubleFeaturePodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on X at DIDFpod. And once again, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/driveanddoubleFeaturePodcast. But sayonara.
Sayonara.